What is a conviction? It says a conviction is a formal declaration by the verdict of a jury or the decision of a judge in a court of law that someone is guilty of a criminal offense. According to Merriam-Webster, conviction is the act or process of finding a person guilty of a crime, especially in a court of law. According to Cambridge University Press, conviction is the act of deciding officially in a court of law that someone is guilty of a particular crime. In fact, let me say what is conviction in law. Cornell University puts it this way: a conviction is an adjudication of a criminal defendant's guilt. Specifically, it is the act or judicial process of finding a criminal defendant guilty of a charged offense. Wikipedia puts it this way: in law, a conviction is the verdict reached by a court of law finding a defendant guilty of a crime. In fact, the opposite of conviction is an acquittal. Simple and plain. So with all of this, really, it is simple to prove that there was a conviction. Because the word conviction, I think many people have come to misconstrue it with convicting a person or sentencing the person to jail. No, a conviction is a decision reached by a court of law or by a jury that a defendant is guilty of the crimes for which he is charged. That is what a conviction is. A conviction does not necessarily mean that a person has to go to jail first before there's a conviction. No. A conviction simply means the decision reached by a court. And that decision reached can be a fine. It can be a sentence of fine. It can be a sentence of jail time, or both, depending on the prescribed punishment for the particular offense committed, for the particular violation of the code. That's what a conviction is. So all those of you coming to scream, oh, there was no conviction, he didn't go to jail. He doesn't have to go to jail before there's a conviction, because from all you can see here, a conviction is a verdict reached by a court of law finding a defendant guilty of a crime. And the opposite, according to Wikipedia, not me now, don't take my word for it, the opposite of conviction is acquittal. Now ask yourself, in this drugs-related case of Tinubu in the US, was it acquitted? That's the question. Was he acquitted? The truth of the matter is that he was not acquitted. He was convicted. And the conviction was carried out in the order of court. That order of court simply stated that that's the order, that the funds in the amount of $460,000 in account number Ds held by First Heritage Bank in the name of Bola Tinubu. Look at the decision of the court. By order, that money represents proceeds of narcotics trafficking or were involved in financial transactions in violation of U.S. Code 1956 and 1957. That was a decision reached by the judge in this case. And that decision is a decision of the court of law. That is a conviction. And the punishment for it is stated also. It's either a fine of not more than $500,000 or prison time of not more than 20 years or both. And in this case, it was just a fine of $460,000. That's the punishment for it. And the reason why it has to be a forfeiture is because the money was already confiscated. The accounts were already seized. It was already in government custody. If the account had not been frozen, if Tinubu had succeeded in withdrawing those monies from those accounts to buy properties like reports claimed he was doing, and there was no more money in that account,
then it would not have been a forfeiture anymore. He would have been made to pay that money back. So there was a conviction. And of course, for there to be a conviction, there have to be charges. There were 2 charges that were slammed against Tinubu in the US. Violation of US Code 1956 and US Code 1957. Those were the 2. And of course, there was a charge number. There was a charge number. And all these are public knowledge now from the certified true copies of the court documents that were obtained. If you look at US Code 1956, it says US Code 1956, laundry of monetary instruments. To avoid a transaction reporting requirement under state or federal law, shall be sentenced to a fine of not more than $500,000 or twice the value of the property involved in the transaction, whichever is greater, or imprisonment for not more than 20 years, or both. And if you change that to US Code 1957, you get the same thing. Prosecutions under US Code 1957 arise when a defendant knowingly conducts a monetary and transaction in criminally derived property in an amount greater than $10,000, which is in fact proceeds of a specified unlawful activity. And if you dig deeper, you find out that it's still the same thing. Fine of not more than $500,000 or prison time. Those were the 2 charges that were slammed against Tinubu. So there was indeed charges slammed against Tinubu, not even a charge, 2 charges. Violation of US Code 1957 and violation of US Code 1956. And there was a charge number. The charge number is in the documents. You can see it. And there was a sentence. The sentence is there for you to see. There was a court order and the judge reached a decision that the monies in the account represented proceeds. That was a confirmation after a long process of investigation. So for Senator Opeyemi Bamidele to come and affirm that there was no charge, there was no conviction, after having practiced in the US, after claiming to be in possession of a law license to practice law in America, that's perjury.